You know that feeling when you finally decide to upgrade from that cheap, plastic-keyed keyboard you bought on a whim, only to discover after a few weeks that the keys feel like a rubber mat and the sound just slides off the edge? It's a classic buyer's regret. You spend a little, you get a lot less, and then you're stuck wondering if you should have saved a bit more for something that actually feels like a piano. That's why I wanted to take a close look at the Kawai CX202 digital piano in Rosewood before anyone throws another budget model into the bargain bin. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started researching mid-range digital pianos, I kept seeing two camps. On one side were the ultra-cheap 61-key keyboards that promise real piano feel, but end up sounding thin, and on the other were the high-end models with ivory-topped keys and built-in recording studios that cost a small fortune. The CX202 lands right in the middle, and the question is whether that middle ground actually solves the problems you've probably run into with cheaper gear. Let's talk about the core issue most new owners face: the action. Kawai's responsive Hammer Compact II graded action gives you 88 weighted keys that mimic the heavier low-end and lighter high-end of an acoustic piano. In my testing, the low C keys felt noticeably weightier than the middle range, which helped me develop a more authentic finger technique without the need for a separate acoustic. For a player who's been practicing on a non-graded keyboard, the transition felt smoother than I expected for a piano in this price range. That's a practical strength you can actually feel when you sit down and play a Bach prelude or a pop ballad. Now, sound is the next big hurdle. The CX202 ships with 17 built-in voices, ranging from grand piano to electric piano and a few orchestral options. I spent a few evenings playing a simple jazz chord progression and a classical etude, and the piano voice held up nicely. The resonance and sustain were believable, especially given the 192-note polyphony. The polyphony matters when you're layering sustained chords with a melodic line. You won't hear any voice dropping out prematurely. However, the limited number of voices means you won't get the deep orchestral library that a workstation offers. If you're looking for a piano that can also double as a full-blown synth, you'll hit that wall pretty quickly. One hidden trade-off that shows up once you plug the unit into a real living room is the built-in speaker system. The Rosewood finish looks gorgeous, and the speakers are decent for bedroom practice, delivering a warm, rounded tone. But when you open a window and the ambient noise climbs, the speakers start to sound a bit thin. In a small apartment, the sound is fine, but for a larger room or a home studio, you'll probably want to add external monitors or headphones. That's a practical weakness. The piano is perfectly functional on its own, but it isn't a standalone sound system for performance spaces. So who should actually consider the CX202? If you're a serious hobbyist or a beginner who plans to move toward classical repertoire, the graded hammer action and full-size keyboard are huge pluses. The piano feels real enough that you can start developing proper technique without an acoustic, and the 192-note polyphony lets you experiment with sustaining chords and arpeggios without choking the sound. It's also a solid choice for teachers who need a reliable instrument for a studio or a lesson room, because the split mode lets you set the left hand to a bass sound and the right to a piano tone, which can help students practice hands separately. On the other hand, if you're a producer who needs a wide palette of synth sounds, or a performer who expects stage-ready amplification, you'll probably skip this model. The limited voice count and the modest speaker output mean you'll spend extra on external gear anyway, eroding the value proposition. Likewise, if you're on a razor-thin budget and can't stretch beyond the $400, $600 range, you might find a decent 76-key weighted keyboard that meets your needs without the extra finish work. Let's look at a couple of real-world scenarios. I have a friend who works from home and uses the piano during lunch breaks to unwind. He set the CX202 on a compact stand, plugged his headphones, and now he can practice quietly without disturbing his family. The dual split mode lets him switch to a simple organ sound for a quick jam session, and the transition is instant. That's a practical strength. The piano adapts to both quiet practice and a bit of playful experimentation without any extra software. Another example: a local music school purchased a few CX202 units for their beginner classes. The teachers reported that students who previously struggled with the spongy feel of cheap keyboards were able to produce cleaner dynamics right away. The graded action gave them a sense of weight that encouraged proper finger strength. The downside the school noted was the need for a separate pedal.